So this drop was kind of silent. This mid-February, Disney actually just dropped a new show on Disney Channel and Disney Plus, and it's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, the show. Despite the fact that it is a Marvel property, it is catered a little bit more towards families and teens, and it's not exactly connected to the MCU despite a few references, so that might explain the silence, but still, Disney, what the heck? I barely knew this even came out. But despite the fact that it is not an MCU show, I'm still interested in any new animated additions that Disney really adds to their catalog. So, of course, I had to watch it. And I'm glad I did because it's pretty good. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Hi, my name is Liz, and welcome to my first Hollywood review here on YouTube. This is the first of many videos that I'm hoping to do. So, if you like what you see here today, treat it like a little bit of a preview. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for similar videos in the future. Today, I will be giving a review of the Moon Girl show, at least my review, in terms of the plot, the characters, the animation, some references to the MCU, etc. We will be breaking this show down. Again, a little bit of a nod to my channel. Something that I love to do personally is break down representation and diversity in Hollywood and see how exactly Hollywood and these studios are navigating this new world where they're trying to incorporate more diverse identities and seeing if they do it properly in a way that's not overly done. AKA films about, the civil rights movement if it's about Black people. Like, girl, those films are interesting, and I'm a history major. But give me something new. And that's what this seems to be. The Moon Girl show, something new. But again, I love talking about diversity in the world of art and media. So again, if that's something you're interested in, make sure you are subscribed. And make sure you also comment down below some shows you want me to look at in the future or movies. And let me know your thoughts on the show if you have watched it, or your thoughts in my review. Are you going to watch it now? Just let me know. With that being said, let's get into the video. So what exactly is the show about? The show follows the main character, whose name is Lunella Lafayette, and her family of 5 that lives in the Lower East Side of New York City. She is basically a child genius. She's only 13 years old, and she pretty much is a master of anything STEM. If there's something that needs to be done, some like trivial problem in reality, she has some invention that will somehow solve it. That highly analytical side of her has its strengths, of course, and that is mostly her character, but of course it also has many downsides, which leads to many plot devices in the show. One of the unintended consequences of her inventing shenanigans is actually how the second title character, Devil Dinosaur, ends up in the Lower East Side of New York City. I will not say any more than that, though, because I want people to go watch the show, but it's in the first episode, so that's all you really need to know. From the get-go, from the very first episode, we are made to know that Lunella is very passionate about helping her community. And actually, that is the catalyst that leads her to becoming Moon Girl, and of course, with her sidekick, Devil Dinosaur. It is a total of 6 episodes in the series, and except for the first episode, which is a special, they are about 20 minutes long, and I'm pretty sure it's that length because it's also on Disney Channel, so you gotta have that, shorter runtime. Now, let's talk about my review of the plot. The plot is pretty simple. It's an episodic series, meaning that there's not really a general plot line or story that's taking place over the course of each episode. I think with a shorter season and each episode only being about 20 minutes, that's pretty smart to do. For me personally, as a viewer as well, I really enjoy this because I don't always enjoy thinking or having to deduce some mystery every single time I sit and watch TV. Is it fun? Is it enjoyable? Yes, of course, sometimes if it's done well. And there's also a lot more pressure if you do that as well. But this show does not take itself that seriously, and I actually really enjoy that. It's very much an escapism series if you're looking to get into the show. What this also means is that the success of the series falls less on the plot and more on the characters of the show, which I actually think is pretty good because I think that the characters in the show are pretty decent. I think they're good characters, and you see their growth over the course of the season, and I think that was a pretty smart move with this show. And despite the fact that the show is episodic, there is a good amount of continuity within the series as well. There is one detail, for instance, that I think a lot of Black people might have noticed, which I will be mentioning something about race as I indicated in my passion to do so in my intro, which was this. And it was going to be my one gripe with the show, but I'm so glad I did not make a review until I watched the whole thing. Because in one of the episodes, I guess it's a slight spoiler, but it's okay. It's not like, I'm not going to say what exactly happens. She falls asleep, and she has an afro, if you've seen photos of the character, and she falls asleep without a bonnet or a do-rag or anything. And I'm just like, girl, you gotta protect your hair. Like, how are you falling what the heck? And I was like, that seems like a weirdly missed detail, Disney. But no, no, I just should have been patient because this is fully addressed later in the season. But the fact that this was done earlier in the season to then set it up for something later, that is such smart and consistent and fluid writing. And there's other moments like this as well, and I just love it. You can tell, despite the fact this is a show catered towards mostly teens and families, and that it's episodic, like it doesn't mean that they were sloppy writers. A lot of the time, I feel like when a show's episodic, people take that as an excuse, people being like creators of shows and stuff, as an excuse to kind of be sloppy. Like you don't really have to pay that close to attention to detail. There's not really much you have to foreshadow. But these foreshadowed moments make the show so much better because you're not really expecting them to. Again, the show's pretty episodic and the target audience is not very mature, so it was great to see. It was an added touch that I thoroughly enjoyed. Now, in terms of MCU references, now, as I said before, this show is not really connected to the MCU. I'm assuming it's kind of like some of the other animated shows that kind of existed in the past that have like Disney titles and characters. Not Disney, Marvel characters, but I guess it's the same thing at this point, so I stand corrected to my correction. Where it's just an offshoot of, you know, some character or like comic book concept that's not actually connected to some wider movie universe. In short, it's not like the Disney What If show, or I keep saying Disney instead of Marvel. Again, same difference, I guess. I could only see 2 references to the MCU or just Marvel in general, which I think has its pros and cons. I think a pro is that anyone can really go in watching this show. If you're expecting to be or having to be a Marvel nerd in order to watch this show, that there's going to be like a ton of references, do not think that. It's okay. However, I guess the con, which is just a personal con, it's not like affecting the writing or anything, I personally wish there were a couple more nods to the MCU or Marvel. I do think that some of the plot things can be explained with Marvel comic book lore, but I still wish there was just like a couple more things. So that's just me as the nerd or lover of Marvel, just longing for something more. And on that note, let's talk about the characters. So there are 3 primary groups of characters, and they're basically all connected to the main character, Lunella, which I think is great. There's not really much of any side quests, which I think is fine if they do that. But the series so short, episodes so short, I think is really, really, really smart to just center everything around the main character. Nothing too off in any directions. It's very centrally focused. But the 3 groups are Lunella and Devil, which is, of course, the red dinosaur that's in the title. Main character number 2. Lunella and her best friend, Casey, who you may have seen in some clips. I don't really think she's in the comics. Don't quote me. I like Marvel, but I'm not the biggest nerd in the world. I do not know everything. And of course, third is Lunella and her family, the rest of the Lafayette. So let's break down each of these 3. So let's first talk about Lunella and Devil. First off, let's talk about what I was kind of hinting at in the plot section, where some things can be explained through Marvel comic book lore, I guess. I feel like no one really questions the existence of Devil too much, and I think that's okay. With a show that really is, number one, again, its target audience is pretty young or family friendly, and you know, it's short, like, you do not need to over-explain stuff. It's not necessary. It kind of reminds me of what's sometimes done in anime. Like, it's usually so obscure and no one questions it, and it's okay. And I'm really glad that Western media is starting to kind of pick up on that a little bit. You do not have to explain really obscure plot devices sometimes, especially if the series is not that serious. Just let it happen, and that's Devil's existence. I think the relationship as a whole is very endearing. It's very much like dog and human relationship, kind of. Of course, instead, he's a giant red dinosaur. So Lunella, she has a lab that is in an abandoned subway tunnel that is part of her apartment complex. It's kind of connected, and that's kind of like where Devil just like hides out. So of course, there's not always a giant red dinosaur walking around. But again, the relationship very much is reminiscent of a 13-year-old or teen that would just like be easily attached to any sort of animal. You can tell that she gains a connection to Devil very quickly, but it's believable because she's a kid, and I feel like me as a kid, if I saw an animal, even me now, let's just talk about me now. If I see an animal, if I see a cat, if I am selected by the cat animal adoption system, what's it called? I would choose the cat. The cat would choose me, and I have a cat now. Like, it's not, I'm not questioning it. So I think that relationship is fine. It's cute, and I think it adds a little bit of a unbelievable element of the show. Not in the sense where it's like, oh, it's bad writing, but no, in the fact that it's just like so obscure that it helps the viewer not take the show as seriously, and that's okay. Once again, I'm not sure how Devil and Lunella's relationship is in the comics. However, I'm not so sure if that really translates to the show. I'm sure some other Marvel nerd has, debunked this or already talked about this. I don't know, somewhere. Now let's talk about Lunella and Casey. Casey is her best friend. She is of Jewish and Puerto Rican descent. And sometimes you will catch her speaking Spanish in the show, which I think is a nice little touch. But something I think I really, really want to talk about with their relationship is this is the point of the show where I can already see so many people saying, this show is so cringy. I think this show's terrible. Why is it so cringe? Cringe, 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 cringe. And I have to say this. Remember, the target audience of the show is not typical Marvel adults. That is why it's not tied to the MCU, at least in my belief. This show is for teens and family, and it shows through their relationship. It is very much a common relationship that you would find between two teenage girls in the 21st century. They're talking about social media. They're talking about doing nails, wigs, fashion, hair, anything. Some people might like it, some people might not. It very much reminds me of the relationship between the main characters in Turning Red, the Pixar movie, but it's a little bit tuned down, and I think it's done a lot better. A lot of people thought that movie was a little bit unbearable. I really thought of my thoughts on that movie. I think it was okay. I thought it was a cute film. But I think the relationship kind of reminds me of that. But again, a little bit tuned down, and it has more of a purpose in the plot, if that makes sense. I really like that nice touch of having that representation there too, having a Black girl main character and then a Latina and Jewish secondary character. I think deuteragonist is the proper term. And I think that was nice, having that duo as, the main characters in the show, especially given that it takes place in the Lower East Side, which, if I am correct, does have a high minority population. And it's something that's a little bit touched on in the show too, just so slightly. Like, they don't talk about race like that much. Like, I would say it's like 5% of the show, or if it's ever mentioned. If anything, it's mostly implied. For instance, the plot of the first episode very much implies that their community is oftentimes abandoned and not taken care of. And I think that that does have indicators in what is the general demographic of the region. And again, seeing those two people as the main characters, you have a Black girl and Latina and Jewish girl as like the main two characters, I think it makes sense. Oh, also, Casey has two dads, which I know is going to make a lot of people upset. They only show them one time, but I already can see, I can smell the reviews, the mom reviews from far away. This show is not friendly for children. There is a scene in the show where it shows two dads not even doing anything. They are this far apart, even further than that, this far apart. It is, oh my God. And then, speaking of representation, might as well wrap it up on that train already. Let's talk about the Lafayette family. So the family is Lunella and then her two parents, her mom and her dad, and then I think her dad's parents, so her grandparents. So that's their little family of five, her plus the four of them. Her family runs a roller skating rink in the Lower East Side, and they've been open for I think 40 something years. I don't know. They reference it in the show. It's a long family business. They entertain the community by having this roller skating rink, and it does add into her character too, which, if you've seen her, costume design, it has roller skates on it, so it's connected. Their family dynamic very much reminds me of just a typical American family sitcom dynamic. Like, you have the kind of silly dad, the more serious mom, like, what the heck are you doing? But also the mom who does have her little quirky traits. And of course you have the grandparents who are the typical grandparent characters. But if you specifically have seen Black sitcoms, it very much reminds me of that as well. It's kind of giving Craig of the Creek dynamics in family. And in terms of my review in this dynamic of a Black family in a Disney show that's catered more towards families and teens, I would say that I really, really, really liked this because they did not talk about representation 24/7, but there was an episode where it did kind of come out, not about Blackness specifically or like Black discrimination, but about an aspect of Blackness that I don't think many people really think about. And I thought that was really cool. It felt personal to me, and I saw online this felt really personal to a lot of other Black people. I thought it was a nice, cool way that they took this thing, made a villain out of it, but it wasn't a villain that was like, of course, like, oh, this other race of people hates Black people. No, 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 no. You'll see. But it's pretty nice. It's very, I see that. I like that nod. And I thought it was done really, really well.
Oh, and to clarify what I meant by this scene, because I realize some people could take this out of context, because of course no one really knows what I really enjoy talking about in my reviews. But basically, when I say you're not talking about representation 24/7, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be talking about representation 24/7, but there's two things to know about this. Number one, I feel like if the show is not meant to do that. So this show is literally a superhero show that's about a girl with her dinosaur living her best life, fighting bad guys, and that's the show. I feel like it would be very out of place to include representation conversations in the show overtly, right? And two, to me, and I know a lot of other Black people feel the same way because I've had conversations with Black people about this, when shows constantly want to be preachy and constantly talk about, representation and diversity and like in the show itself, it doesn't feel like it's for Black people. It feels like it's for non-Black people to educate them. And as a Black person, I just enjoy seeing someone who looks like me on the screen and them living a life where they constantly are not having to talk about representation all the time. And that's why I really, really enjoyed this show, because it really did feel like it catered more to Black audiences, unlike some other shows I see where they constantly have to have episodes about sorts of like discrimination or aspects of like the Black experience in a really overt and often like trauma informed way, and I don't think that's always necessary. So it's really nice to just have a lighthearted show with a Black family that didn't have to include really deep, really difficult conversations regarding representation, because any sort of discrimination was already kind of implied in the show.
Just to even finish this up, I think that lately Disney has been adding more representation to their works. It shows that it's just getting better and better each time they do it, and this definitely was a really good job done by Disney. So kudos to them. And lastly, my two favorite parts of this show, the animation and the soundtrack. Y'all. First, let's talk about the animation. So the animation was done in 2D. It was done by the same studio that did the Rise of TMNT. And also they're the ones who did the Marvel What If show. But I really like that they stuck to 2D. Oh my god. Thank God they stuck to 2D. It was very much giving the same energy as Into the Spider-Verse if Into the Spider-Verse was in 2D. There was a lot of playing with colors. There were a lot of comic book reactions like pow, boom, or something like that. It was very much animated. It was very much giving anime energy a little bit. The character designs were very unique. The designs of the villains, there was a little bit of times where it was like, okay, I feel like the villains could be a little bit more distinct. There was like a two that I got mixed up for a second. Other than that, I felt like they messed around a lot with the character designs. Even the background characters had a lot of attention to detail to them, even if they had no lines spoken, which I thought was really cool. You could tell that there was so much care and attention done to the animation of this show, and it was one of the most beautiful and most attracting aspects of the show in general. The use of color really, really was helpful in the storytelling. It helped set the mood, it helped set the scene in so many times, and it really just was a beautiful touch for something that, like, again, you really don't see this amount of care of attention for a show aimed at this target audience, and so I thought it was a really, really nice addition. Now last, the music. The music. Y'all, they went out here and really did a Childish Gambino fight sequence? You did not have to go that hard, Disney, but you did, and I am grateful for that. Like, I feel like watching that fight sequence literally says everything that needs to be said about the animation and the music in this show. And honestly, just the show as a whole, truly a slay, which I know that's kind of cringy, but this deserves a slay. I truly applaud you. And of course, with the original music, the person who sang the theme song, which, mind you, is stuck in my head. I could sing it right now, but I'm a little bit scared of any sort of copyright issues. It's so catchy, and the person who sings the intro is also the same person who voices Lunella. Her name is Diamond White, and if you're an X Factor fan, she was on the X Factor. And overall, it's just so good. Multiple of the songs are in my playlist, multiple playlists on my Spotify right now. Like, it's addictive. It's addictive. I never skipped the opening once when I was watching the show. I was like, play that opening. It is so catchy. So catchy. So it was just so well done. Huge, huge, huge kudos to whoever it was to do any aspect of music in this show. Like, yes. So what are my overall thoughts on this show? The Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur show was a great addition to Disney Plus and Disney Channel. Not only is it lighthearted, with a plot that's easy to follow, but it also still has a lot of continuity, and they are not really sloppy in any way, shape, or form, despite the fact that it's episodic. The characters are lovable. The relationship between Lunella and every other character is so convincing and feels so real. And of course, the animation and the music is just next level. This truly was a great high note for Disney to start on this year. I feel like this really, really will set a new tone or standard for animation that comes out of Disney, which is what I'm really, really hoping for. I'm just so sad that shows like these get slept on so much, which is why I'm making a video, because I feel like this is how they only get one season. And for me, this was literally my comfort show for the past 2 days. Like, I was not expecting this, but I am so happy that I randomly decided to watch it. And sorry if some parts of this video seemed a little bit vague. I just didn't want to give out really any spoilers because I 100% recommend this show, and I 100% think that y'all should go watch it. But if you've made it this far, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad that you are here, genuinely. I love making videos for people to see. I love talking about these topics, and I'm looking forward to making similar videos in the future. Let me know your thoughts on the Moon Girl show if you've watched it. Also, let me know your thoughts on my review in general. But please be nice in the comments. We are only kind here. Let's not do any fighting, y'all. Be nice. I post a lot more frequently on TikTok, and yes, of course, I was talking about the series I have on there where I talk about diversity in Hollywood. It's called Diversity Done Right. So if you do have a TikTok and you're interested in that, go follow me over there. Again, make sure you're subscribed, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye! And in my head right now, I'm literally singing the opening to the show because it's so catchy. Oh my god.